Good morning, first grade. I hope you are having a super wonderful, terrific, awesome, fantastic day today. Today, we are going to talk about the vocabulary strategy called List Group Label. And this was a strategy that we've talked about once before now, but it helps us to put different words into groups and give them a label, give them a category, which is helpful for us because we like to put things into categories, into groups. It helps our brain remember things, make sense of things, and make connections from something. If we know one word and then we know that there's another word that's similar to it, it can help us make the connection and remember that new word even better. So when we're reading and we come across new words, we could use this strategy and others that we've talked about to help us understand these words. So I'm going to give you an example of something, and I want you to see if you can figure out what I'm talking about, what word I'm talking about. Okay, so slow and steady wins the race. You have to look at the whole and not just the parts. Plan ahead and play later. Okay, do you remember what all of those were that I just said? Yeah, those are all of the lessons that we have read in our stories, Seven Blind Mice, The Ants and the Grasshopper, The Hare and the Tortoise, and I know you've read the poem, the fish poem. You've heard from Miss Taylor with the poem about the fish. So these were all the lessons of the stories. So there's actually another word that you may have heard, or you may have used, or you even maybe have heard me say it, but the moral. Has anyone ever heard that word before? The moral. Give a thumbs up if you have heard that word before, and put your other thumb up if you think you might know what that means. The moral. And sometimes you might hear people say the moral of the story. Yeah, does that help a little bit? The moral of the story. So the moral is another word for the lesson, like the lesson that we've been talking about. There was the mouse moral at the end of Seven Blind Mice, that it was better to look at the whole rather than just the parts separately. That's not exactly what it said, but that was the moral at the end. So each of the fables, as we've mentioned, has a lesson, and that's what makes a fable, is that it teaches us a lesson. So we want to talk a little bit more about the word moral. So let's try together, and you can kind of think yourself about what are some words that go along with the word moral. When you hear someone say that word, or the moral of the story, what are some things that might come to mind? So I know that I think of the word lesson. Probably also think of the word message. It's like a message that the author's trying to give us. It makes me think of that it usually comes at the end of the story. Then I think about, well, what are some examples of morals? Well, kindness. Usually stories tell us to show kindness. And I did not spell that correctly, sorry. Kindness. I think about, where do I see fables, or I'm sorry, where do I see lessons or morals? Usually in fables, like we just talked about. You could kind of think of it as though it's like a piece of advice from the author. The author's giving us some advice, which then that makes me think of wisdom. It's like wisdom. The author's giving us wisdom. Let's see. Sometimes it's almost like rules. Like we have rules at school or rules at home that we talked about in social studies, but the lessons or the morals of the stories are often like rules. Okay, so maybe you thought of some of these words that I put on my list. Maybe you have come up with some of your own words, and that's great. But that was the first step of the list group label strategy. When you're learning a new word and talking about a new word, you try to think of the different words that you think of when you hear the new word. So for example, when we heard the word moral, these are some of the other words that come to mind. All right, so now that we have this list of words that comes to mind, now we want to try to put them into groups, right? Because these words are all a little, they don't all mean exactly the word moral. They're not all exactly the same meaning. They're all related to the word moral, but there's some differences within the group. Like kindness is an example of a moral, of a lesson that you might learn from a story. So I might put that in a different group. Fables are where we find morals. So fables doesn't mean the same as moral, but it means where we can find those moral of the stories or the lessons, right? The word lesson is like another word for moral. So you see how you can kind of start to see how these words are going into different groups. So I've started grouping some of these words. So that's the second step. You make a list of the words that are related, then you put those words into different groups. And then the last step is to label your groups. And why do we do all of this again? Because our brains like to put things in categories and groups, and we like to name them, right? Shirts, shoes, socks, pants, those are all types of clothing. We label that, we keep that in a category. Cereal, fruit, cookie, brownie, it was just National Brownie Day. Those are all examples of food. We like to keep that in a group. That's how our brain organizes and keeps things and makes sense of things. So I have this label, definitions for moral. So other words that mean the same or close to the same as the word moral: lesson, message, advice, rules. Then I have a label in the group where morals are found. So end, fables, stories, that's where we always find or generally find the moral of the story or the lesson of the story. So what you're going to do today, and we're going to go and check out Seesaw again, so just hang on one second. Okay, I'm over here now, so you can see. When you hit add on your Seesaw activity, you are going to see this page, and we have some words, a list of words, and we have some groups, and we have some labels. That's our strategy, remember, list, group, label. Now, I've given you the labels, and I'll read them to you. So other words for morals, so other words that would mean the same as moral, where morals are found, lessons morals teach, and definitions for morals. So ways to explain what a moral is. And over here, we have some words from our list that we just made earlier. And what you're going to do is use the move tool to move these words into the group in which you think it best fits. Is there more than one right way to do this? Yeah, absolutely. As long as you can explain your thinking of why you put a certain word in a certain group, there's no one right way. There's no one right or wrong answer. So let me just read these words for you, and you can kind of start thinking about what group do you think it best fits in. Now, I know this is new for us and we're just learning. So we just ask, as always, that you just try to do the best that you can. And like I said, you might all sort these slightly different, and that's okay. That's all right. We might all come up with a little bit different answers. So this is the word wisdom, rules, advice, kindness, we should know that one. This is the word message. This is the word lesson. This is the word stories, fables, and then this is the word characteristics. Characteristics. So think about which of these words would go in which spot, in which group. And again, no one right way to do this, no right or wrong answer. It's just really what you think. And we'll see how you sort. All right. So remember, this is the list, group, label strategy for learning and remembering what new words mean. All right, let us know if you need any help or have any questions, and talk to you soon. Bye.